Good day, everyone. Tyler Wain here from Hope Financial Solutions. This is the December 8th Hope session. So I'm here with my good friend and colleague, Wendy Baird-Packard, who is the CEO and founder of Speaking Up. I could tell you what she does, but I think it's probably best to let the experts say. So Wendy, how would you like to introduce yourself and just
That'd be great.
say a bit about
Yeah.
what you do?
Sure. Hi, Tyler. Good to see you. Yes, my name is Wendy Baird-Packard, and I'm a communication specialist. I work in three specific areas to maximize people's potential in their communication. So what that means is if you're a job seeker, I specialize in helping you find that job that you're looking for. Lots of communication goes into that via your resume, your networking, and your interviews. And so I help you step by step work through getting to that next job. And that's why I'm here today, basically to talk about job seeking and getting a job if you're laid off. But my other two areas that I specialize in are everyday public speakers, people that are managers, volunteer coordinators. I help them make sure that their communication is effective and understanding their audience and how to present. And then the third section that I work in is with small businesses. I help them build and understand cultural communication and how that affects their employees and how it affects turnover and their culture as a whole as a business. So I work with them to develop a strong corporate communication culture to retain employees and to help their revenue. So that's kind of a big picture there.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Wendy. And yeah, what I love about what Wendy does is she works on the business side and the personal side. So that's not the only reason, obviously, but a lot of where I've had her come on, as Wendy briefly mentioned. So today's Hope session, and you would have seen it in some of the social media, we're focusing on careers and what to do if you get laid off. So a lot has been in the press. The tech sector has already been hit hard. There's a lot of rumblings, a lot of angst. And my business, Hope Financial Solutions, is there to give you hope, right? So when I saw this as a potential area of concern, I wanted to take it and really, the blog post is out now, which Wendy helped. So thanks, Wendy. She helped me put it together. But December, the blog post, it's called Catastrophe to Opportunity. So we're really going to walk you through a process of what to do if you get laid off, or even you can apply this if you just want to change your career, right? So you want to change, and the whole point we'll touch on, but if you're going to be happy doing a 50K job instead of a 100K job, do it, right? Like life's too short. That's my view. And we can walk you through how to make that transition. So Wendy, before we jump into the process, would you like to just share a bit some of the things you've seen as you work with small businesses, or some of what you're seeing? So Wendy's located in the northeastern US, and I'm in southern Ontario, Canada. Yeah.
Yes. So some things that'll be interesting because we have this international thing going on here. Maybe a little different than what you all are seeing in Canada is what we're seeing here. But as Tyler mentioned, I work with a small business, and I also work with clients that are trying to get into those businesses. So I see both sides. I see the business owner and I see the person looking for a job. I do want to jump back, Tyler. You have a great point when you said about income isn't always the basis for the selection of the position. So it's kind of funny, depending on how you're wired, depends on the job. For me, it's never been about money. It's about the satisfaction of the job. It's about the freedom of the job. It's about what really makes me want to get out of bed in the morning, what really makes me happy. Now, you talk to my husband, and he's very focused, thank God, he's very focused on retirement and consistency and income. And that's great too. That's great for him as well. And so for him, dollars matter. For me, sometimes they don't, which we sort of balance out. But when you're really looking for the job you want to love, it is about what you love. And we'll talk more about that. So kind of answer your question, Tyler, what I'm seeing, very interesting trend. We were talking about this just a minute ago. I like to speak with employers all the time. I like to go to job fairs. I speak to people all the time. So I'm understanding what's happening in the industry. And something unique here, because service industries are having a hard time finding long-term or even any short-term employees, so much so that they can't keep the doors open. They're reflecting back now to a process of day pay. So our service stations, our retail stores, things like that in the US are now going to, if you walk in the door, you get paid that day. So I might start a job yesterday and I have day pay that I have access to the next day. So where sometimes you have to pre-plan a lot if you're going to leave your position, that it takes 2 or 3 weeks or 4 weeks to get that job and get that paycheck. Currently in the US, we're seeing a trend that you can start a job and they pay you the next day, which is kind of a unique situation, especially if you're laid off. We're going to talk about that. You may have to really think about your budget, but in this current economy where it's tough to find staff, they're starting people off at $13 to $15 an hour, and you're getting paid that day or the next day, which is kind of a unique situation now it may not be your dream job, but if you're like, oh my gosh, I got bills to pay now, it's kind of a unique thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Did I answer your question? That's a long
Yeah,
answer.
no, I think you did in a sense. The industry's changing, right? And
Yeah.
I know it's very similar in the US and Canada. There is job shortages in certain areas. And that's where, in my view, I view companies are starting this day pay to try to attract people because they just need staff. I know we're in a smaller town. We've had local restaurants just say, we're done. We're closing at 3:30. We don't have staff.
And
Now
some
how
businesses
that's
close,
gonna, how that evolves, it may, right? There's a lot of talk of recession and that. So whether they get forced to, we'll see. But I would say if you are in that situation, it's great to get some quick income, but we're going to walk you through a process that you don't have to do that, because that, in an essence, you're becoming reactionary, and that's not the goal we want. You want to use this as an opportunity, not reactionary. So I think for the most part, I kind of keep a pulse, and Wendy and I chat about weekly, but it's very similar, the trends in US and Canada. There's some nuances, obviously, local markets, but in general, I feel pretty good about saying it's a similar trend. So just quickly jumping in now, I'm going to share my screen. So just if you do a little bit of role playing with us, imagine whatever job you've been doing, you get laid off, or you've just said, you know what, I've had it, I can't take it anymore, and you walk it. You're done, right? That we wouldn't recommend taking that approach, but just imagine suddenly what you have been doing has stopped, and you are saying, uh-oh, I've got a potential catastrophe here. What my life had been looking like, the income I had been making is gone. I'm going to walk you through a 5-step process. You can read more about it in the blog post if you like, and I have some social media up as well. So my website is where the blog is, www.hopefinancialsolutions.ca. But as we walk through it, and Wendy and I will kind of interplay as we go, if you do get laid off or something drastic happens, this applies to any situation you face. Just step one, breathe. I preach it or say this a lot to my clients and whatnot. If you're in an emotional state, you actually cannot physically, the physiology does not allow you to make an informed, rational decision, right? There's fight or flight, and it's called the amygdala. It's part of your brain. When that fight or flight response happens, the amygdala takes over, and it actually clouds your rational thinking. I say breathe because in a practical context, taking in oxygen will help reduce that. But if you get fired, you're probably going to be in a heightened state. Just go home. Don't say anything silly. Don't sign something in the moment. Wendy, I'm sure, can speak to that. You have time to think, and you never have to do things out of pressure. But just take some time, right? And take it for yourself. Netflix and chill.
Yeah. So Tyler, I used to work for Workforce Solutions, which in the US is kind of goes right along with unemployment, but they're a free service. If someone's unemployed, they can come in and help and find jobs. And part of our jobs, I lived in Texas, the oil fields are really, really funny. They go up and down. And so there were times where we would have to go to the oil fields, and for a company, we would lay off people for them. So maybe 100 people at a time. We'd call them into the building and we would say, hey, your job is no longer needed. And it was very interesting, like you said, the reactions that people gave. And the best reactions were when they kind of took a breath and said, what do you have? You know, and we're going to talk about this in a minute. Severance packages. What do I do? I'm going to take a minute to kind of decide what I want to do. Those folks that got mad and walked out or yelled at the boss, that it just wasn't the best option for them. And it usually didn't lead to a rehire if the company brings you back and things like that. So you have to think about that. If you're laid off, it could be a situation where you're a rehire. And you want to leave the company in good graces for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Super important. I always say any job I leave or move on from, I try to keep the door open because you never know. Not burning bridges is always a good policy.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I mentioned don't sign anything under pressure. Like obviously you have a right to legal, but don't be afraid either if you know it's a good fit. Just don't do it emotionally, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
So okay, so you've gone home, you've taken a day or two. Now what you really want to do, assess your short-term finances. I would say you should have been doing this anyway. This is something I really stress to people. But if you have a well-funded emergency fund set up, so an emergency fund in my world is 3 to 6 months expenses. Given the uncertainty in the economy, how inflation's going, I would say you should really be looking more towards 6 months of your expenses. And the analogy I used, this was my tip of the week yesterday, so you can watch that video on my social media. I call it's really you're playing the best off or the best defense is a good offense. That's how I view this emergency fund, because right now you can play a bit of offense and put some money away. Then if the unexpected happens, you have that. It's a defense. An emergency fund is insurance. It prevents you from having to make a quick reaction. So what you can actually do if the unexpected happens is, because you've got the immediate need safe, you can take some time and use it as an opportunity. So that's where my post said the emergency fund really is the linchpin to allow you to turn that catastrophe to opportunity. Because if you get laid off and you have nothing and you're living hand to mouth each paycheck, you do have a crisis, and you need to look and you need to get some money quickly. So I don't know your thoughts, Wendy. What are some of the thoughts, like if somebody comes and says, I need a job tomorrow, what are some of the things?
Yeah, I think that, like we talked about as we open this segment, that in the US, you can do that. You can take that job if you have to do it. We both agree it's probably not your best option. But if you do have to do that, then maximize everything out of that job. Go into it with the mindset that this may not be where I want to be or where I want to stay, but this is where I am now. And everything I do from the first time I walk in the door with that job is going to go on my resume. So what skill can I learn? What skill am I going to be able to transfer into the job I want? Can I move up in this company quickly to an assistant manager or manager position? Can I take over auditing, logistics, infrastructure, anything? Look for how you can be a leader in whatever job you're in. And even if it's temporary, because you can still use those skills moving into you're transferable into the next job. So kind of going into that job going, oh, I just need to make the money, I don't care. When really the mindset should be, I'm going to maximize what skill set I can build here, get a good referral. So when you leave, you give your time's notice, you have a good referral or reference, and maximize the income, especially right now. The income here in the States, $13 to $15 an hour starting, and that is day pay. So if you need that money, great, but also be looking at how you can advance your skill set in that momentary job.
Yep. No, great advice. And yeah, you have to do what's practical and what makes sense for you and your family. But we're trying to lay some groundwork of how you can use it as an opportunity, right? And if you work through the process, you won't be in a reactionary state. You'll be able to be proactive. So moving to step 3, and these timelines here, I'm not saying you assess your short-term finances for 60 days, should take a day at most, right? But look at the 1 to 2 month window. What do I have coming in? What are my bills? Am I covered? Then look at your medium term, right? So I know Wendy chats about this. Like, it could take you 3 months to find a job, and then another 3 to actually start, right?
Right.
So in that meantime, what are you doing? And this is where, with your medium term finances, so you've got the immediate needs set, but remember, you're not collecting money now, so it's not coming from your job. So where can you get it from? You can look at it and get it from EI, or unemployment insurance in the US, employment
Mhm.
insurance in Canada, same thing, right? You get a payout for the loss of work, or you may have gotten some severance pay or a package from your job if you did face that. So look at those income streams. Just because you have an emergency fund doesn't mean you do the right thing and get additional income. Your emergency fund is for an emergency, but you want to have that and only have to dip in as little as you need because of the emergency you face. So look at your budget, look at, maybe, times are a bit tighter. Maybe you stop eating out once a week or twice a month, whatever it is. Look at where you can cut back a bit. If you had some big payments that you make annual payments on, maybe you can convert them and pay them monthly. Give yourself a little bit of breathing room. If there's some items, maybe you need to do some spring cleaning or fall cleaning or whatever time you're in, sell some items off on Kijiji. Side incomes. Look at your budget and try to really narrow your budget down, and reforecast it with your new situation. That will give you more flexibility and more time, which we won't go there yet, but in step 4 is where you really want to start using the opportunity. So, Wendy, do you have any comments? Maybe some of the severance? I know you mentioned you had some experience there, but just in general as well.
Yeah, you just want to really look at your severance package that they provide. Really read the letter. You touched on it, Tyler, earlier. Kind of get some advice if you're not sure on it. Are they giving you any health benefits extended? So sometimes they'll leave you on their health benefits for 60 or 90 days. Are they paying out your vacation pay? Is this a possible rehire situation? So the example of the oil fields, it goes up and down. A lot of times they'll bring people on, or is it a permanent layoff? Are they planning on restructuring and bringing people back in? Your severance package is going to have all of that in there. And so really understand what they're offering you so you know what to do next. And is there a lump sum pay? Can you fight your severance package? That's a tough one. That's a tough one. Unless there's money that you're owed for work and vacation, the severance is what they want to give you. It is what it is. But you want to make sure that if you had 3 weeks vacation time, that you're getting paid out for those things. They're compensating you for the benefits you're losing, is what you want to look
Yeah.
for.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and I mean, in no way am I a legal expert or have been there, but some of the work I have done, I do know there's the statutory employment standards, like payouts. This is more of a Canadian context, and then there's common law, and
Yeah.
they can be very wide. So that's where some legal advice would
Yes.
likely serve you well, to know
Yeah,
where you're at.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah. Okay, so you've kind of shored up now. Let's say you've got minimum of 6 months time where you're like, okay, I can meet my needs. I've rebudgeted, I'm doing well. Now is really where you start to go on offense. So take that time, right? Even if it's 2 weeks that it took you to sort all this out, put in your EI application, confirm how much you're going to be getting, things like that.
Mhm.
You now have realistically 5.5 months where you're like, okay, I've got my income figured out, right? So take that time and use it as an opportunity. How many times have you said, oh, I wish I could do this? Oh, I wish I could look at this, right? So take some time and say, what does my ideal life look like? Do I want to be doing the job I'm doing now or was doing? Do I want a different job? What do I want it to look like? For me, when I work with clients, I will ask the question, what's your passion? What are you passionate about? Because if you can find a way to monetize what you love to do, it doesn't feel like work. You have to still keep balance, right? If you put it all into that one thing, you could burn out, but try to keep balance and do what you love. Um, and if you need, talk to people. There's assessments you can do. Me personally, what really solidified my move to being a financial coach was I looked at my brain profile. And the single biggest trait is uh, like an emotional and empathy, right? Where as a financial analyst or controller, it's very cut and dry. There's not as much room for that. I still have very strong logical, analytical, strategic mindset, but empathy is my single biggest. So by being a finance coach or life coach, I could see that was a much bigger aspect.
Mhm.
And that's where I can help serve and work with people to achieve their dreams. So that's where I know Wendy and I speak about this a lot, but we're on the same page. Like, take the time, look at your life. So, and Wendy,
Mhm.
I know you've got lots to say and are itching to jump in. So,
No,
what
it's
would you
fine.
like
Yeah.
to? Yeah.
No, I think Tyler's right on that. I think this is an interesting time. There are a lot of free services in the US, I know, that can help you kind of sort that out. But this is also a good time, kind of plug what we do a little bit, is to get somebody to guide you a bit. And I know you're like, oh, if I'm on limited income, how do I do this? But sometimes a career coach or financial coach can help you get there faster by giving you a plan. But I love when Tyler says, do what you love. That's what started me. He was talking about empathy, and it's kind of what started me on my path. I grew up with a mom who said things were very black and white. You know, you're supposed to get a job and be in that job for 50 years, whether you loved it or not. And it was a teacher or whatever it was. And I was like, no, what if you want to be an actor? What if you want to be, what if you want to be a florist? What if you want to do something, you know, race car driver? What if I want to do something like that? And she'd always be like, oh, you know, people don't get those jobs. Well, people do have those jobs, you know, so why can't you have those jobs? So that's what I love to do too. I love to figure out what people really want to do and then give them very, very strong, I don't want to say strict because they're not strict, but very clear guidelines on how to get there. And the first thing is, like Tyler said, find an assessment, find someone that can do an assessment. I like an assessment called Sparketype, which is free. I also like University of Pennsylvania, I think UPenn has quite a few surveys that are free as well, because they do an ongoing research on people and different styles of people. So they want you to take their surveys because they use you as research. So those are really good ones too. And once you can kind of analyze where your core is, like Tyler was saying, empathy for him. For me, it's definitely service and empathy. That's where I fall into. You then find that space that you want to work in. So let's say you're like Tyler, let's say you're in finance and you now want to go to something completely to the other side. Maybe you want to work in nonprofits at this point, the Humane Society or something like that. And you don't have any skill set for that. A great way to start getting skill set for that is to volunteer in that area. So if you want to work, if you want to build your own 501c3 or a nonprofit, then go work for a nonprofit, go volunteer for a nonprofit. So you can really see if you're going to really love it for a full-time career. So yeah, Tyler, um, thoughts?
Yeah, no,
You're-
no, I thought no, that was great. And yeah, I love the point. Like, just because you have that dream and what you want to do, it doesn't mean that you can get there right away. You need to look and you need to build. So let's say my dream is I want to be the CEO of Apple,
Mm,
right? I am going to need to take some time and build. And through my personal career, I worked in consumer goods, confectionery, things like companies like that, corporate world. I made it a point to get different experiences and build breadth. It was
mhm.
a VP at the time, now head of um, one of the companies I worked for. He said, remember, if you're building a tower, you got to build the base first. So the
Yes.
wider your base, the higher your peak. And this was a shift I had to go through because I always thought when I came out of school, well, you go straight up the ladder. Well, no, it's a journey. And like you mentioned,
Yes.
Wendy, I
Yeah.
think it has shifted over the recent times where
Mhm.
it I don't believe employers look at it now like, oh, you do this and because you've moved every 3 years, you're downgraded. No, like they want that breadth, different
Yep.
countries, different experiences. Every
Yes.
job I worked, it was, hey, we want entrepreneurial mindset because
Yes.
then you go and you get things done, right? So that's where I was like, you know what? I'm going to start my own business. I'm going to give it a
Yep.
shot. I still have my plan, but just really think about what you like and
Mhm.
what you want your life to look like, but try to plan those steps. And that's where
Yes.
coaches or other experts can help you kind of because we've been through it, right? And
Yes.
that's where we can
Yes.
help
Yeah.
say, this is how we got to where we were. And
It's such
if
a good point.
as yeah,
Sorry,
just
Tyler. I'm so
or
sorry.
just quickly, no, I just wanted to mention Wendy, she mentioned that assessment on that in the blog post. There is a link if you wanted to do that.
Mhm.
So that's on the website.